So I do realize that all of you are unique individuals, unique and different, just like everybody else. And I know that those of you that have seen the Barbie movie have had a variety of responses. But I'm just going to let you know a little more about me, and maybe some of you experience this when you go to see a movie as well. I buy my ticket and I take the ride. And I figure if I've left that much time and energy to a film, I'm going to absorb myself in it and sometimes use it as a transparency on my own life. Sometimes, like with Oppenheimer, it's a more serious movie. Some of you have been brave enough to see both of those movies in one day, which would be a free LSD trip, in my opinion. But our responses aren't always that we like the movie. It's not, to me, of course, being in the ministerial biz, it's kind of analogous to a sermon. The point isn't always entertainment and whether you like it or not. In fact, liking it and disliking it is really irrelevant to me. I want to know if it's changed your perspective, it's widened your perspective, it's deepened your perspective, how it had an impact on you. And so that's the way I go to the movies. And so I always have to take Kleenex, and I always have to have something to drink. And I really don't want to be talked to during the movie. So I love those kind of announcements that they share. So this is the season of buzzing, from the pesky but necessary little bees buzzing around our outdoor picnics. They've started already. They got here early. They're September bees and they're here in August. And the buzz of the Barbie movie, grossing $575 million domestically, 1.3 billion internationally. So what's all the buzz about? Well, first, I'll tell you, it's not about dolls. So again, it's irrelevant whether you had a Barbie or not. So if you feel elevated in some way because you didn't, that's the same thing as being elevated because you don't have Facebook. It's fine, it's a choice, but it doesn't put you in a different strata of humanity. Just saying. So it's not about dolls. You approved of the real life, actually measurements of Barbie. Remember how she looked originally. If she was an actual woman, she'd be 5'9". These would be her measurements: 39, 18, 33. 18 is the waist, and a shoe size of 3. So not to worry, newer, more realistic versions are coming out and have starting in January of 2023. This is also not a movie for children. It's safe to bring children, except one phrase in the movie towards the end they didn't need to use, but it's too late and they didn't talk to me about it beforehand. But if you want to get, like Michelle was pointing out, your children to get a glimpse of the struggle for equality, open options for career choices, and legitimizing the experience of a spectrum of real human feelings, yes, take them to the movie. You see, I rated the movie and I would give it the highest number of Rotten Tomatoes. That always confuses me about, anyway, we won't get off. Anyway, use the tomatoes if you want, which is a compliment. And I would go so far, because of the way it impacted me, I would see it as an epic film. It's a feast of multicolored sets, character development, and something that will appeal to multi-generations, men, women, and children, who many are seeing it multiple times. We're only up to 2. It might be enough for a while. Especially just having all of you in my visual is just going to keep it rolling. You are actually a part of the character development of the main cast: Barbie, Ken, Alan, Midge, and Skipper. Yes, whether you have seen the movie or are a fan, or whether you would never see it because of how you perceive Barbie from prior decades, you are all Barbie, Kens, or maybe Alan's, or maybe Skipper, or maybe even Midge. We'll get to her. Some of us were around in 1959 when American businesswoman Ruth Handler's dolls were manufactured by Mattel. She gets a nod as the beautiful elderly lady on the bench with Barbie. I apologize if you think some of these are spoilers. I think it will, if you haven't seen the movie and you intend to, this is just going to keep you awake through the whole thing. I could not help but think of the women depicted in the popular series Mad Men, a deep dive into advertising world from 1960 to 1970, about the same time that Barbie was created. Each man and woman in that series, and many of us, rode the same roller coaster of rivalry between men and women, challenged by glass ceilings that prevented promotions and glass hearts that were broken over struggles with identity, body image, promises of the American dream turned into personal nightmares and more. That's the Barbie movie. From the opening scene, we are thrown into thinking the analogy of 2001, A Space Odyssey, is made as little girls destroy their baby dolls, and then the iconic Barbie shows up on this deserted beach. Those little girls may be from the same era that I was, and we were indoctrinated into doing domestic chores with reminders on our underwear of what we should do each day. Monday, laundry; Tuesday, dusting; Wednesday, vacuuming; Thursday, ironing, and so on. You get the point. I'm sure there's not a male here that had the pleasure of that kind of package of underwear. So are these little girls standing in awe of Barbie, representing their future possibilities? From bathing suit clad perfection dimensions, but she can still be an astronaut, a teacher, a scientist, a mother, and look like a model. Or are the little girls standing in awe of the juxtaposition being jolted from their previous mother's only roles of caregiver, hanging up clothes on the clothesline, to super supreme being of perfection, able to take on the world in stiletto heels? And if this scene is upsetting for those that took it literally, I have counseling hours during the week. Because from the get-go, now you are hooked and you're jolted. And that isn't just a feel-good movie about a doll that's presented, it's more. And that's exactly what Greta Gerwig and screenplay co-writer, a man, Noah Baumbach, intended. The colors of pink and purple, glittery everything abound, and then pull the younger audience in with boppy musical dance scenes and the idea that advertising uses commonly, that each of us is Barbie and each of us is Ken. A sleepover dance-a-thon gives depictions of all races and sizes being Barbie, all of them accepted equally into Barbie's world. What a beautiful world it is. Even the morbidly obese gold sequin-clad Barbie dancing right along with the variety of size and race Barbies, including Christy, the only black Barbie that we know about. And a flash to pregnant Midge. Let's bookmark her for later. She needs a whole paragraph. All the Barbies happy beyond measure after dismissing Ken from the activities and festivities. This superficial frivolity stops for a long pause when Barbie momentarily has a deeper, real thought, almost a real feeling, a foreshadow of the future, when she says, "Does anybody ever think about dying?" And they all stop. Dying? How can you think about dying when you're dressed in pink and you have all this music? And anyway, she pauses. She covers her bubble crashing moment with, "Oh, I'm just dying to dance." And the party goes on. So poor Ken waits till his next scene comes up, probably spending all his time exercising, as every Ken on the beach has a six-pack, and I don't mean beer. In Barbie world, he lives for Barbie's glance and approval. His career is beach, And he's very good at it, as all the representatives of the KINS practice are, with their perfect profession matching their bodies. So let's tip back to Midge for a moment. She and Skipper were Barbie's friends, and they all could swap clothes because they were all the same size. Well, that Midge married Alan, and oh my goodness, had 3 children, Nikki, Cassandra, and the twins that were never introduced by name. This happy family line was pulled when parents complained that Midge was too young to have children. So in 2013, Mattel revamped Midge, and she was younger again, single, no children, no connection to Alan, and she was a vision of her former self. Gone were the days of her as an action doll, complete with a magnetic stomach that held the little baby, and you could put it back and forth multiple times. Oh, if pregnancy and childbirth were that easy. Midge could have held some stronger representation here, possibly addressing those weak links in the feminist movement in the 1970s and 1990s that many of you lived through. It was fine to go out and work. It was fine to have a career. It was fine to get a doctorate. It was not fine to stay home and raise your kids. Many families, mothers and fathers, were judged for that. Midge is closed that opportunity with the way that they manipulated her. If you keep a keen eye, for those of you that haven't seen it, you'll be able to see Midge 3 times with a little baby bump. More than a nod should be given to poor Alan. Poor Alan. There's only one Alan, though, in a world of many Kins. His nerdiness turns almost heroic later in the movie. He comes through at the oddest times when needed. He kicks the construction guy's rear ends for being inappropriate. He is an original, and he can still wear Ken's clothes. So he must spend his off movie set time furiously working out. You never see Alan and Midge together. So their relationship becomes clandestine but powerful in the absence of public displays of affection. Leave it to Kate McKinnon, Saturday Night Live comic, to give us weird Barbie who ushers stereotypical Barbie into a frightening real world. This is the big shift in the existential crisis. You must see the movie to appreciate the full scope of weird Barbie and her devotees. I am not going to do the splits or strain my body, but her legs go in places that only a Barbie doll should. So, some of you have had a friend, or you might be of that ilk, that you took your Barbie dolls and you cut and colored and shaved their Barbie doll heads. You might have even taken magic markers and made tattoos on them, which you could pop those heads off and rearrange them into Picasso-esque art projects. My daughter was in that camp. Oh, how I wish I still had her art projects dedicated to Weird Barbie. And as Sasha in the Weird Barbie camp, yes, played by teen Ariana Greenblatt, joins the Weird Barbie bunch, seeing all Barbies as fascist, encouraging horrible, unrealistic beauty standards and contributing to the climate crisis. We are then introduced to the real mother and daughter struggles of the time, and the times that some of us have lived through, thank goodness. America Ferrera tries to be the cool mom and hopelessly fails until the end of the movie. And this is her speech, and I probably won't do it justice because I'm moving through it a little quickly, but it is profound and I encourage you to look it up. She says, "It is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think that you're good enough. Like we have to always be extraordinary, but somehow we always do it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to just want to be healthy and also have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to say pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. I'm not laughing because it's funny. It's just too familiar. But always stand out and then always be grateful. But never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that, but also always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, even in those stilettos, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard, too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or even says thank you. And as it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm just so tired, she says, of watching myself and every other single woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll just representing women, then I don't even know. Too much. But back to Ken. They're in the real world now, and Ken gets to shine. He absorbs patriarchy of the real world, where me and the horses run everything. He also refers to his Ken house, created after taking over Barbie land, as his Mojo Dojo Casa house. And he dresses up in a cowboy outfit, furnished with video games and masculine everything and images of male power everywhere, including all the men in the navy blue suits, the white shirt, and the red tie. We've seen enough of that lately, haven't we? I guess not. Although he thinks Barbie has failed him in a long-term, long-distance girlfriend kind of relationship in real land, she does respect him for who he can be. He says, I'm just Ken, but I want you to see the man behind the tan, and I can do stuff. So Ken and Barbie both desired to have restorative brains and autonomy, and isn't that what we all deserve? The movie undercovers just enough of various waves of feminism. The first wave harkening back to Rosie the Riveter and Ayn Rand and Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own. Remember, for those of you that raised children, sometimes it was a closet or you stayed in the restroom for longer because you needed a space of your own. The second wave of feminism, Gloria Steinem and women moving out of the home and into the workforce and chasing their spot at equality. And then yay for the third wave of feminists coming through now. Our current sisters and brothers who are opting for choices of staying at home or not, or creating businesses from home. But the point is having choices without shame. New feminism expects options and responsibility for everyone. Nothing is going to assault anybody's gender if they wash just dishes or clothes. I've seen it done successfully. So here we go. We've all been affected by the impacts of feminism, some more so than others. Some of us have lived through it, and we don't want to go back and think about it. I went through and thought about my list of when I was looked over because I was the wrong gender, or when my pay was at the lower end of the scale, or when I had to have 3 to 4 babysitters backed up in case one of my children got sick so I could go to work and leave them at home ill. Many of you have these stories of inequality, and men also. Some of you were pushed into careers that you really didn't want to do because you had to be the breadwinner, and there wasn't room for your emotion or feeling, sometimes only anger. And so these injustices are things that we're not going to pass on. We have a decoy Barbie who pretended to be helpless under mask giggles and fake confusion. Oh, how could I ever learn how to play golf without you? And on it goes. And America Ferraro's powerful speech seems to echo back to the message, and I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I would like you to look it up. Sojourner Truth's Ain't I a Woman from 1851. And she says, oh, this is what she says. Well, children, there's so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think twixt the Negroes of the South and the women at the North, all talking about rights. The white men will be in a fix pretty soon. But that's all that they were talking about. The men over there says that women need to be helped into carriages, lifted over ditches, and to have the best place ever. Everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. Ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no men could heed me. Ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it and bear the lash as well. Ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children, as my mother-in-law did. And I have cried out for my mother's grief. None but Jesus heard me, ain't I a woman? Then they talk about this thing in the head. That's what they call it. I remember the audience whispers, intellect. That's it, honey. What's that got to do with women's rights or Negroes' rights? And on it goes. So just as Barbie faces having feelings in the real world, like Sojourner Truth did, she gets to get out of her box. I want you to think about what has kept you in your box through your life. Ken had expectations without personal representation for his choices either. And so just as Sojourner Truth or Janine Roth, who wrote so much about body image, etc., and Ayn Rand talked about marriage at such an elevated level of independence and interdependence that I'm surprised more people don't use it in their wedding ceremony. All of these people had open hearts, strong wills, and voices. The changes will continue to come. So the movie, if you haven't seen it and you don't want to, that's fine. I'm not going to talk about it all the time. Or if you want to take the improvement that you see in the calls to action from the movie, it's a call to encourage this generation and on to future generations that open choices for career, identity, and more are open so that the angst is less. The desire for addiction is less, so that the beauty of artistic options and following your passions is more. So that all the Barbies and the Kens, the Midges, the Allens, the Skippers, and the Christies can live a life more open with less madness than we went through. Namaste.